Hello, this is Chuck Ridgway, Automation Technology Manager at Horner. Thanks for joining us for another Tuesday live stream. Well, it's December 23rd. Merry Christmas to you and yours, and happy holidays. Now, today I've got a customer requested topic that I'm going to share with you. Here it is: comparing Canvas graphics and traditional graphics. So the Canvas series of controllers, we're talking all-in-one controllers as well as our new CPU 300 modular controller, those products have been out, or were released over the last 18 months or so, ever since Seascape 10 was released. So those products have a new graphics set, new graphics capabilities that in many cases, or actually most cases, is a significant upgrade over the graphics that are available in our other products, which we call traditional graphics. So today, as I mentioned by customer request, we're going to compare what's available in traditional graphics and Canvas graphics so you can see for yourself. All right, let's get started. Okay, we're going to start, of course, by answering the question, what are traditional and Canvas graphics? And then we're just going to compare the two. We're going to take a look at system graphics, basic objects like push buttons and pilot lights, for instance. We're going to take a look at more complex graphics objects like the alarm systems, the recipe object, trends. We're going to take a look at object attributes that can be taken advantage of with variables. And we're going to take a quick look at runtime operation. How does that vary? So that's how we're breaking down the topic today. Okay, let's start with traditional graphics. What are traditional graphics? Well, basically, these are supported by all Horner controllers that have color touchscreens that aren't in the Canvas series, and it's really the same graphics tool set that has been available really since the very first Horner all-in-one controller that featured a color touchscreen back in the mid-2000s. Now, traditional graphics are really focused on speed of execution and flexibility. You won't find anywhere, whether you're talking an operator interface or an all-in-one controller, you won't find faster graphics when it comes to changing screens and executing than what you'll find with traditional graphics in the Horner controllers. And the objects are very straightforward and easy to use. Now, they just don't have a lot of bells and whistles, and they're not drawn in an extremely complex way. But again, they execute very fast, and they're very easy to use. Now, customers told us that they wanted an option for some more complex, nuanced graphics to be available in the Horner product line, and that's where Canvas graphics came from. So these, of course, are supported in all Canvas products, whether it's an all-in-one controller or a new CPU 300 that's part of Canvas as well. And the way these are built, they're built around a graphics toolkit that is used by most major manufacturers of, let's say, automobiles. So in your new car, you may find a really attractive looking dashboard and different graphics maybe for your heating and air conditioning systems and those sorts of things. Well, those graphics are typically built using a graphics toolkit. So we use the leading graphics toolkit that's used by companies like the automotives to build the Canvas graphics. So they're really focused on more modern and nuanced look with more extensive runtime properties, and the more complex objects like trends and alarms are much more comprehensive and feature-rich. Now, what you might notice, however, is that at runtime, they don't execute quite as fast. That's because there's more going on under the hood than what you'll find with traditional graphics. And boot up time initially is also longer, and that's all about that more complex graphics toolkit that's being used under the hood. So those are some kind of basic differences between traditional graphics and Canvas graphics. Now let's take a look kind of feature by feature, blow by blow of some of the differences. Let's start with system graphics. Okay, so when you press that system key and you go in to make local adjustments to the unit, what do you see? So on the left there's traditional graphics. It's a text-based menu system that you can navigate through. Most of you are extremely familiar with that by now. It's highly effective, but it's very straightforward, okay, and text-based. On the right, you see the system menu from Canvas. Much more attractive. It's all graphics based. You can scroll up and down. And again, it's just a significant difference when it comes to looking at a text-based system menu versus a graphics-based system menu. So the difference is in the system menu. Now let's start with basic graphic objects. Push buttons, pilot lights, those sorts of things. Okay, starting with those push buttons. You can see that with our standard traditional graphics, you have a selection of, basic push buttons. Whereas with Canvas, you've got much more in terms of graphical options when you want to represent what that switch looks like on the screen. You have a choice of a variety of different push buttons. You've got different toggle switches, you have multi-position switches, so you just have more choices on how things look on the screen. Okay, with basic data objects, the main differences are the shapes that are available, okay, as well as the fact that with Canvas graphics, if you choose, you could choose to select a Tumblr style edit for that particular numeric data field, and that's shown there in a graphic on the lower right. So with that, of course, you just use almost like a scroll wheel to set the different values for the data field. And that's not available with traditional graphics, okay? So that's kind of a basic look at the differences in the data object. Looking at sliders. Sliders are popular objects. They've been around for many years in traditional graphics, and you have your choice of what your range is, up and down. You can choose to have up and down increment and decrement buttons. You can choose titles, those sorts of things. It's a very functional traditional slider object, but again, it is a little bit limited. With Canvas graphics, you have more choices, okay? You can have more choices not only in how it looks like, whether it looks more like just a simple progress bar with a knob on it, whether it's got two knobs on it. It could even be rotary. It doesn't have to be linear. So again, more choices, and they're drawn in a little bit more advanced way. That's what you get with Canvas sliders, whether they're linear or rotary. Gauges and meters, again, the big difference is how many gauges and meters are available with Canvas and what do they look like? Okay, those are really the big differences. On the left, again, if you're looking for a gauge or a meter, or maybe just a needle that you can put over the top of a graphic, you can do that extremely well with traditional graphics. But if you're looking for something more nuanced that you can just select from Cscape itself, configure and go, then Canvas obviously has more modernized and more nuanced gauges and meters available. Let's talk about the alarm object next. So the alarm object with traditional graphics is very functional. When you configure it, you can choose for it to be a button, which shows you kind of at a glance based on color, what the current status of the alarms are. Do you have any alarms active? Yes or no, that sort of thing. And then when you press it, you can get a full screen view of those alarms and their descriptions, etc. Whereas with Canvas, again, we've updated those dialogues that are showing you current alarm status. We've given you more flexibility in terms of how you configure that status. And we have a alarm ribbon that you can place, on every screen if you choose, that will scroll through with the current alarms. So that is something that's just not available with traditional graphics. Now let's talk about trending. There's a lot of big differences in trending between traditional graphics and Canvas graphics. Let's start with traditional graphics. So with trends, you have up to 4 pens per trend. And I believe with most products, not the basic ones, but with a lot of products, you've got maybe 16 pens available for the entire project, if you will. And again, you've got as many as 4 pens per trend. And at runtime, when you're viewing those trends, if let's say there are 3 pens on the trend, you're going to see all 3 all the time. You have control over how your y-axis is configured, what your titles are, how you label your axes. All those things are available with traditional graphics. Now with Canvas graphics, it's much more advanced. You can have as many as 16 pens per graph. Okay, and I believe a lot of the products support up to 64 pens per project, so much more capacity, if you will. You can have multiple axes shown on the screen at the same time. So maybe you are graphing both temperature and pressure. You want to show both pens, but they're maybe scaled differently. So you can show 2 different axes, both a pressure axis and a temperature axis if you choose. So that's a nice capability. Also at runtime, you can turn pens off just from the standpoint of what's shown on the screen. So if you want to, zero in on what's happening with temperature at a particular zone, you can turn off the other zones temporarily, at least on the screen, so you can see exactly what's happening with the zone that you're interested in. Another real big difference with Canvas over traditional graphics is that with Canvas, you can trend integers, double integers, floating point values, all of those. With traditional graphics, it has to be an integer. So if you're starting with a floating point value with traditional graphics, you can still trend that, but you're going to have to scale it to an integer and display that on the screen, at least from a pen standpoint, to get things to look the way you want. So you've got a little extra work to do on the traditional graphic side. So there's just a lot of extra bells and whistles, both from the standpoint of at configuration time and runtime when it comes to trends and Canvas. All right, now let's talk about XY graphs. The object that's labeled as an XY graph with traditional graphics isn't truly an XY type graph. What it really is the ability to take a list of variable values, so think of those as just a list of variable values, and graph those all on the y-axis. Okay, but you're really not X versus Y. It's just a series of values that are graphed on the y-axis. So it's not really a true XY graph. Very useful, but not a true XY graph. So that's what's available with traditional graphics. Now, because some customers really like that particular graph style, we carried that through to Canvas. But in addition to that, we added a couple other options. First of all is a scatter graph. Identical to what I've already described, except not connecting the lines. So if you're doing some tests or you want to look at some results and the location of the dots on the plot are not necessarily sequential from left to right, then you don't have to connect the dots, if you will. You can choose a scatter graph and display everything just as a series of points. Also in Canvas, we do have a true XY graph, which we call a multi-point graph, which allows you to have two variables, an X variable and a Y variable, a set of each of those, and it will truly graph XY for each of those points. So again, much more in terms of capability with Canvas when it comes to XY graphs. Okay, now let's talk about recipes. Now, with recipes, the basic functionality of recipes is very similar between traditional graphics and Canvas graphics. You effectively can think of it as in the background, you've got a spreadsheet of effectively, different ingredients and different products. Okay, think of those as your cells that are in a spreadsheet. So the background functionality of recipes are the same, but what you see on the screen and what the operator can do at execution time is very different. So with traditional graphics, basically what you're going to do is you're going to build a screen that allows your operator to make adjustments to recipes, to change recipes, those sorts of things. But you're going to effectively build it using other objects. With Canvas, you've got a pre-configured recipe object that you can configure options for. You can add graphics to it if you want. You can have a scroll list along the left of the different products. You have a lot of different options that you can configure. You've got a lot of pre-configured functions shown there in the lower right in that row of icons on the lower right. Pre-configured icons and functions that you can select or deselect to, again, to customize precisely what you want that recipe object to look like at runtime. So much more advanced on the Canvas side. So the basics of what happens with the functionality of recipes is very similar between traditional and Canvas, but what it looks like on the screen and what you can configure and how you configure, that's all very different with Canvas. Okay, there's also a video object comparison we're going to do next. So with traditional graphics, you have the ability to display simple videos, maybe for the purposes of helping the operator, maybe for the purposes of describing what the machine is going to do, for instance, those sorts of things. Really, the Canvas object is just much more inclusive. So with the traditional object, yes, you have a window to display the video in, but if you want to have buttons for the operator to start and stop the video, that sort of thing, you have to add those manually to the screen as separate objects. With Canvas, all the controls for stopping, pausing, reviewing, repeating, going full screen, all those are built into the video object itself. And of course, because Canvas is more advanced, you also have higher resolution capability with your videos as well. So again, much more significant capabilities on the video side of things with Canvas. Now let's talk about runtime properties. This is a big one. So with traditional graphics, you see on the left there, the attribute configuration dialog. So you can see there for most objects, you can control visibility and you have the ability to make some color changes on the fly based on the value of a variable that you assign as an override variable in that dialog box there on the left. With Canvas, we maintained that same functionality, but we added to it. So there still is the same basic attribute capability with Canvas objects. However, they also have additional properties, advanced properties as we call them. So you can assign either simple variables or maybe a structured variable to your advanced properties to control things like the rotation of the object, its position on the screen in the X and Y axis, its opacity, so not just whether it's visible or not, but how much it allows to shine through with its opacity setting. You can also even change the size of an object, its height and its width. So all those are advanced properties that are only available with Canvas objects. Again, they still support the basic attributes, but they also support the advanced attributes. Now let's talk about backgrounds. Now with traditional graphics, if you're using Cscape 10, you do have the ability to set simple backgrounds on your screens. So it's not like there's no background capability, but it's just simple backgrounds on your screens. Whereas with Canvas, just about every object, not just screens, but just about every object can also be given a background. And that background can be a color, it can be an image, it can be a pattern. You can change the tint of that pattern. It's very advanced. So a lot more you can do from a look and feel standpoint to really jazz up your objects with Canvas. And again, that capability just isn't there with traditional graphics. Okay, now let's talk about what you see at runtime, or what the operator sees at runtime when they go to edit a value. Okay, whether you're talking a numeric value, an ASCII value, what have you. When you're talking about traditional graphics, the keypads are very basic, okay? Very functional, but very basic. As you can see, an example of one there on the left. Now on the right, the keypads are built from that, graphics toolkit that I mentioned before. So we didn't build these from scratch. We just selected from a graphics toolkit the specific keypad that you would need to use to edit a particular data type. On the right, we're showing an ASCII data field, but if it was numeric, you would basically be showing numeric values and not a full ASCII keyboard. As you can see, that looks quite a bit different, okay? A little bit more modern for sure. Now, at execution time, it does run a little differently than maybe the traditional keypad that you're used to. So you may have a little bit of a job to get used to the new keypad because it is, again, much more advanced and nuanced than what you'll find with traditional. And again, I mentioned this before, there's also Tumblr support if you want to create a Tumblr edit of a data field where you can, spin each number or something like that. That is available with advanced graphics. Okay, so that is a run through of a comparison between Canvas graphics and traditional graphics. I hope that was useful to you and will help you make an informed decision when it comes time to select a product, a Horner product for your next machine. So that does it for our content for today. It's never too early to sign up for a training course. We've got 2 courses available in the first quarter. If you're interested in those, either our basic course or our advanced course, I would encourage you to get to our website and sign up today. There are lots of ways to interact with Horner online. Plenty of information available at hornerautomation.com. There are hundreds of videos that you can peruse on our YouTube channel, and we're very active on LinkedIn, where you can find out the latest Horner news. All right, so next week, we've got a very interesting topic for you. We're going to show you how you can use a Horner controller as an edge device and digitize an existing machine using OCS 360. So if you want to get data from your existing machines up to the cloud, do some dashboarding, alarming, you don't have to swap out the controls on your existing machine. You can just add a Horner controller to that machine as an edge device to take advantage of everything that OCS 360 has to offer. So we're going to demonstrate how to do that next week. You won't want to miss it. If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, don't hesitate to do so. It doesn't cost anything. And if you choose notifications when you subscribe, you'll be notified every time we go live or every time we post a new video. Okay, so once again, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. We'll see you again next week. Let's spend time with our friends and family and do some good.